Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're diving into a really powerful way of looking at the AuDHD experience. We're going to explore how something that so often starts as a massive challenge can, with the right kind of support, actually transform into an incredible superpower.
So, let's just start with this big question right here. What if a child's biggest struggles, the things we often label as problems, were actually the very path to their greatest strengths? We're talking about an AuDHD child, someone experiencing both autism and ADHD. Think about sensory overload, intense emotions, just a completely different way of processing the world. What if those aren't just issues to be fixed, but are actually laying the foundation for something truly remarkable? That's the idea we're going to unpack.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to start at the beginning. Before we can understand how things might go off track, we need to know what the ideal starting point looks like. And it all comes down to what's called the body-mind connection, a child's natural default state.
So what is this body-mind connection exactly? Well, it's not just about what you're thinking. It's this deep, fundamental link between the brain and the entire nervous system. When that connection is strong and healthy, a child feels balanced, they feel clear. Their curiosity, their intelligence, it's not something we have to pour into them. It just bubbles up naturally from the inside out. They're literally learning from their own inner experience.
And this doesn't happen all at once. It develops in stages. First, between about 2 and 4 years old, a child learns to connect safely to themselves, mostly through movement and play. Then, from 5 to 8, that solid foundation lets them connect safely with other people, learning to share their needs, try new things. And finally, from age 11 and up, they can take that connection and expand it out into the big wide world. It's a really beautiful, natural process.
So, what breaks this vital connection? The short answer, the loss of safety. You see, kids are like little radars for the emotional weather in a room. When they constantly feel disharmony, whether it's from someone being dishonest or feeling judged or just being totally overwhelmed, that inner sense of safety starts to crumble. And if that happens over and over, that connection to their own inner world gets tougher and tougher to find their way back to.
And if you look at this list, the things that cause this disruption, they're things we see all the time. Constant comparison to others, judgment, punishment, having your needs brushed aside. Every single one of these is like a small tear in that fabric of safety. And over time, all those little tears weaken a child's trust, not just in the world around them, but in themselves. And that's what disrupts that essential body-mind connection.
Now let's move forward a few years, because if that early connection is already shaky, adolescence becomes, well, a neurological crucible. It's this intense pressure cooker of a time, full of vulnerability, and the stakes are incredibly high, especially for an AuDHD brain.
So, during the teenage years, the brain does this massive upgrade. It's called synaptic pruning, and you can think of it like cleaning out a super messy closet. The brain gets rid of all the connections it isn't using much to make the pathways it does use way faster and more efficient. And get this, we're talking about removing up to half of the connections in the prefrontal cortex. The brain is literally deciding which skills and pathways are important enough to keep for the rest of your life.
And this is why the environment during those years is so incredibly critical. The brain prunes based on experience. So if a kid's experience is just constant stress, constant threat with zero emotional support, which pathways do you think the brain decides to keep? It keeps the survival pathways, and it gets rid of the pathways for self-regulation. And the result is what you see right here. They can literally lose the ability to calm themselves down.
And you know, society throws its own curveballs into the mix, which can shape these responses differently. For many AuDHD girls who might face repeated social rejection, their nervous system can learn to just freeze or dissociate as a way to cope. For a lot of boys, who are often given more cultural permission to be angry, their system might default more to fight or flight to protect themselves. But make no mistake, both are survival tactics and both come with huge risks.
Now, picture a typical mainstream school. It's often loud, it's rigid, it can be really controlling. For an AuDHD teenager, that environment can feel like they're running on fumes all day, every day. So instead of that brain pruning process wiring for curiosity and exploration, it wires for survival. It builds its superhighways around shame, threat, and overload. The brain learns to expect danger, not discovery.
And the consequence of that is, well, it's pretty stark. As this slide says, we risk creating teens who are, neurologically speaking, frozen. Frozen in a state of survival. Just think about that for a second. Their development gets stuck, trapped by systems that accidentally reinforce trauma instead of fostering growth.
Okay, so that sounds pretty bleak, right? But here is the really good news. This is not the end of the story. It is absolutely possible to heal, to rewire, and to reconnect. So let's shift from the problem to the solution and look at the path back to becoming whole.
So, to get how healing works, we first have to understand what got broken. And a key idea here is something called structural dissociation. It's basically an adaptation to trauma, where the self kind of splits. You have the functioning part that gets you through the day, goes to school, does the laundry, and then you have these emotional parts that are holding all the fear, the shame, the pain. Healing is all about getting those parts talking to each other again.
So how do we do that? How do we create the safety for that healing to even begin? Well, there's a fantastic tool for this, the TRUST framework. It's an acronym for time, respect, understanding, sincerity, and truth. These 5 things, these are the pillars you use to rebuild that foundation of safety that was lost.
And a massive piece of this puzzle is the language we use. The words we choose can either put up walls or they can open doors. So instead of judging or trying to fix things, we can use language that creates space. Simple things like asking, how does that feel for you? Or what do you need right now? This kind of language sends a powerful message. Your inner world is valid, it's important, and it's safe to share it with me.
Because at the end of the day, you can't just say you're safe. You have to show it. You model it. You do that through accountability, admitting your own mistakes, through acceptance, showing that all of their feelings are okay, even the messy ones, and by giving them autonomy over their own boundaries, making it crystal clear they are always, always safe to say no.
Okay, so this is where it all comes together. This is the payoff. Because when that nervous system gets rewired for safety, when that inner world starts to integrate, something absolutely incredible happens. The challenge actually becomes a superpower. And this superpower has a name. It's called metacognitive attunement. And it is a truly profound kind of giftedness. It's the ability to see what's happening inside yourself in real time, to have this deep, almost intuitive understanding of what other people are feeling and needing, and then to weave all of that insight together to solve really complex, messy problems.
So how does this even happen? Well, it's kind of a 3-step process. First, the healing frees up a ton of mental energy because the brain isn't stuck in survival mode anymore. Second, you get really good at self-awareness, at knowing what's going on inside your own body, and that skill just naturally extends outward into a deep empathy for others. And finally, because you've learned to integrate all your own internal parts, you get amazing at holding multiple, even conflicting perspectives at the same time. And that becomes the secret sauce for creative, out-of-the-box thinking.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? The very same wiring that the brain built to survive chaos becomes the raw material for this incredible superpower of attuned, creative intelligence. It's like alchemy. It's turning lead into gold.
And I really want to stress this point. This isn't about just being book smart. This is a giftedness that is earned. It's forged in the fire of a deep healing journey, and it's shaped by the unique wiring of that AuDHD brain. It's a kind of wisdom that can only come from navigating incredible complexity, both inside and out.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. What could we achieve as people, as families, as a whole society, if we just shifted our perspective? If we stopped seeing neurodiversity as a problem that needs to be fixed, and instead started seeing it as a challenging but ultimately powerful journey, a journey that leads to a totally unique and valuable kind of giftedness. Just imagine what potential is waiting to be unlocked.